Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learn to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday. And welcome back to The Friday Habit. Another awesome day to celebrate. I'm 6 feet above the ground. Actually 5'11" and a half, but you know who's counting.
Hey Mark, how's it going?
Ben, I'm so good. Hey, today we got a returning guest, Jeremy Ryan Slate. Welcome to the podcast.
Man, I'm 5'6" and a half above ground, you know. So
there you go. Hashtag blessed.
Oh, thanks for having me back, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, totally. Hey, if you don't know who Jeremy Ryan Slate is, Google it, or go back to episode 43 and 45 of the Friday Habit. That was a long time ago. We had him back on in 2020.
Yeah.
So
when you were kind enough to come on my show at that time, Mark. So
yeah, there we go. How awesome is that? So we talked about PR and we talked about staying fit as an entrepreneur, all sorts of stuff. So go listen to those episodes and you can get all that origin story. But Jeremy, man, what have you been up to? How's it going? Dude, I think last time we talked, maybe you were like moving to a farm or something like that, or like,
yeah.
Did you do that?
Yeah, so we bought a house in 2020. You know, the economy was kind of like not going so well. And I'm like, this is a perfect time to buy a house because mortgage rates are low.
Yeah.
So we bought a house on like just over 4 acres. And we got 24 chickens. I got my pig here. We got a river going through our backyard, a lake down the street, and I live in the country, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's kind of like, I feel like as humans, our soul longs to connect with nature, living in Colorado, I have the beautiful Rocky Mountains and we, go on hikes and we go camping in the mountains. And it's like whenever you're there and it's still and peaceful, you just feel good, And so I can imagine what you're describing sounds like you could just go on your back patio, drink a cup of coffee, and just enjoy nature.
That and get attacked by a rooster, but it depends on the day of the week, man. We did just get heated floors in our bathroom, which is a modern convenience that is magical. Changer. I've got to say. Oh
yeah, I have heated floors, and it's like when you wake up in the morning and you step on those, like it gives you a little jolt of energy. Like, you know what, life's not so bad.
Yes.
You guys have heated floors. I'm literally like outside in my treehouse. There's not even screens or windows, and it's like 55 degrees here. I'm just sitting here with a little space heater.
Heat wave, man. 55 degrees. It's like 35 here. We got the fireplace roaring, all that stuff.
Dude, that's awesome.
I'm in Virginia. It's not too bad here right now, but man, heated floors. It sounds luxurious.
If you ever remodel your bathroom, it's worth it to lay down the pads and just like do it when you retile. Because it's now that I've had it, I'm like, I don't know if I could ever go back to like cold floors again in the morning.
You're like, I love reconnecting with nature, but the ground's so cold. I can't go out there.
So we just got them we got the bathrooms been getting done over the last couple months, but they just turned on the heated floors yesterday, and I come in the house from my office, and my wife's laying on the bathroom floor. I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "It's so warm." I'm like, "Oh my god,
that's amazing." Yeah. My friend actually in his house, they just remodeled it. He put in their whole heating system is heated floors. There's water running through all the floors
heating or whatever.
Yeah, the whole house is heated that way. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. I feel like. So did you buy a property and then have to fix it up and spend the long game of just doing $5,000 projects at a time kind of thing?
That's exactly what we did. We bought a farmhouse. It's like 100 years old, and there's houses on the street now, but apparently when it was built, there were no houses on the street, and this was the farmhouse, and everybody else is now living on my farm. But we've been doing a lot of projects, man. I just I'm one of those people that I'm very capable. So I replaced a whole bunch of plumbing in the house.
You're like Ben, dude. Ben is like Captain Mr. Fix-It. He's like, oh, yeah, I'll just build it. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, just spend a weekend, building things.
So that's where my office came from. We took our garage, and the upstairs loft was just this empty, useless space. So I reframed the whole thing out. I had the electrician come in and wire it up for me, and then I, put in the insulation. I put up the drywall, painted the whole thing, put down some hardwood flooring, and I have a beautiful office now. Like
Dude,
I'm
that's
that
awesome.
friend. I'm that friend that has lots of projects going on.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe the friend that has a truck that can help you move something.
No, I am the friend with a Volkswagen with a trailer. So there you go.
Okay, you get the trailer. Nice. That's awesome. Well, dude, I want to hear a little bit about just how things are going with your business.
Yeah.
And maybe if you want to inform everybody, like kind of command your brand, kind of what you do and who you service and all those other kind of things. And then I kind of want to talk a little bit about your journey. I know that you use a lot of VAs and other things like that. A lot of our audience is entrepreneurs and they're, self-starters, they're creatives and small business owners and freelancers. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about, some of that transition of using VAs and things like that, as well as I think your wife works with you, right? Doesn't she help out with the business as well?
Yeah, so she originally ran our PR area, and kind of the way our organization is set up, like she runs quality control now, which is actually like above kind of our PR team. So what we do is we essentially book our clients on podcasts, and we've been doing that since 2016. So it's been a while now. And we also now on a smaller scale, but been doing some show production and YouTube optimization too, because we've really started going heavy into video in the last 6 months to a year. Because I think if you're not doing video in 2024, you're crazy. So we've really been trying to learn everything I can learn about video. So that's kind of where we're at, is we're doing that, and we're trying to. It's interesting, and I don't know how to describe this, because like for us, like we were kind of a small 3 or 4 person business for our first 4 years in business, and then 2020 happened when you and I first connected, and we hired probably more people than we should have at that time. So we were a little bit overstaffed. We had to kind of pull back a little bit. And the thing that we've been focusing on in the last year, now with a team of 15, is building systems that allow us to scale better. So we've gotten very good at like documenting jobs and trainings and things like that. I have a system that I use. Chris.ai is a microphone sound filter, but it actually transcribes your calls too. So what I'll do is record a screen recording, and then I take that transcript from the screen recording, I feed it into Chat GPT, and I have it write a process for me. So I've been writing processes better, but now we're also like taking a look at like where the waste is. So we're getting in, we just started using Go High Level as our CRM, because we were able to get rid of our email marketing system. We were able to get rid of ClickFunnels. We were able to get rid of our calendar system. So we're trying to like bring as much centralized as we can. And then now we're just in the process of setting up Asana so that we can kind of have a lot of those systems too, because I found that number one, I think we've lost a lot of money and waste of how we've run things in the past. So you kind of have to figure out where that is. And then if we want to go to our next level of growth, we're kind of setting up a lot of the systems so we can do that, because we've grown well, we've done well. But I think if you get to a certain point where unless you handle kind of some of the basic systems and things like that, the things nobody wants to confront, that's where the next level of growth is.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I feel like, Ben, you're really, really good at that. I feel like, Ben, though, you kind of are on the error of like not spend any money and like create some sort of MacGyver like solution that's free. And then it's like, oh, I built this awesome custom thing for free.
Well, sometimes it's free, or I just pay for tons of different apps, because I'm like, I get super picky. I have like the curse of a designer where I'm like, well, I've looked at Go High Level before, and I have a really good friend that uses it, swears by it. I'm sure it's amazing, but when I look at their site, I'm like, this is too ugly. I can't use this, which is really stupid, right? I'm like, I know that for business, it doesn't make any sense, so I get really picky about what apps. So sometimes I cobble together 10 or 15 different apps that are all beautiful, and I love the way they work. But I'm like, honestly, I probably should just be using one app for this.
Well, that's what I'm similar, Ben, like where you had to kind of drag me kicking and screaming to kind of pull a whole bunch of things together. Because it's like, all right, we use this one for email marketing. We use this one for CRM. We use this one for funnels. We use this one for So I looked at it, I'm like, I'm spending like $10,000 a month in just software, man. This is a little crazy. So it's like, like you find out that the cheap the cheap solution kind of like becomes like a Leviathan of sorts, and you're trying to figure out, how do I rein this thing in? And that's a little bit of what I was looking at, because like you're losing productivity in that, right? Like, because for a lot of these apps, like if they don't have an API or they don't connect, well, you need Zapier in the middle, and Zapier works like 95% of the time, but that
Right.
5% really hurts. So it's
Then
like
you
I'm
gotta
trying to
fix
figure
it.
out like
Yep.
where the lost efficiency is, man.
Yep. Exactly. No, makes sense.
Yeah, we recently we lost a couple of big clients this past fall, and so it's one of those things where right when things are good and you're making money, you're not really thinking about like it's just like, oh, we need this thing, let's just buy it, like just solve problems, And then when you're really like looking at your budget and you're like, all right, I need to make some cuts here, and then you start, like I'm knocking on people's office doors like, hey, do we use this software anymore? Like, when was the last time you logged in and like used this app? It's like, oh yeah, I haven't used that for months. It's like, okay, there's another $40 a month that I was spending on something that, we didn't need. So I've been going through that process of like figuring out, okay, what is necessary? And then also making the decision of like, for instance, there's a program called Notion, right? That's out there. And we use Asana here at Brand Viva, and we've been using it probably for the past like maybe 4 years or so. And so we have really good systems and processes about, onboarding clients and, scheduling different jobs out to internal teams and to external contractors and things like that. And so that works really well. But I was like, oh, Notion's like way more affordable, and then I started getting into it and looking at it. And then I was like, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze, where if I cut my $150 a month subscription to Asana to move over to Notion, which is like $46 a month, if the productivity will actually tank and it won't be, as good as us just spending the money to use Asana. So it's like,
well, yeah, I think the thing that we've been trying to do too, because I think you're right. Like when you're in a, when times are good or whenever, you tend to like spend more than you should, or like you bring in a system maybe you don't need, but like, hey, we can afford it, so why not? So like, we've also taken a look at like operations wise, like when we go through our week, what do we need to do differently? So we've always done our staff meeting every Friday, because I think it's really efficient to do the meeting that starts the week on Friday, because otherwise Monday you're behind the 8 ball. But the thing we started doing with our executive team meeting, and that's where we kind of have the people that run each area of the company. So we'll have like 5 people on that meeting rather than like the whole team. So we can kind of figure out like what are the things we're working on this week. We took a look at, one of the things that we weren't doing before is like when you really want to grow a business, you want to create like a group demand for income, not just the owner demanding income or, people demanding of the sales team or whatever it is. So we've actually started in that meeting figuring out, okay, in each division, how are you going to make money? All right, so, sure, you're booking clients on podcasts, but what are you guys going to do better that's going to generate more income? Or, sure, you guys are doing the marketing, but what are you going to do better that's going to generate income? So that's what we've started doing in those meetings. And then also we've got in a really good purchase order system now, which we weren't doing before. So we'll take a look at the purchase orders in that meeting too, and the executive team will take a look at it and say, okay, well, based on what we can spend or can't spend, like, should we be approving this purchase, right? So like, we're trying to get tighter about that stuff too, to kind of set us up for growth a little bit better.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, how are things as far as, your role in the business and thinking about like, how to grow, the direction to move, like, how, I guess the question is how big is the company? Are you hiring external people, or are you hiring W-2 employees? Like, what does that look like for you?
So right now we have 1 contractor. We have 8 W-2s. And then we have another 8 people on our Philippines team. Yeah. So we're kind of varied in a little bit, that in that we do different things. And then we have myself and my wife are both owners draw. So that's kind of, that whole thing's done differently. Yeah. So we got a good sized team. We're around 16. And it's got a kind of a healthy mix of, for us, like I know for a lot of people out there, when you're getting started, hiring that first person is hard. So we started with VAs first to actually allow us to hire more people domestically, because there are only certain tasks that you can have done domestically, right? Like anything client facing really needs to be a domestically done task. So that's what we've looked at, is VAs helped us grow in the beginning, and we still have a lot of tasks that they help us with. But that's also helped us to hire more here. So now we're, like I said, we have, I think at this point we have 7 W-2s.
Nice. And then what about remote? Are you guys full remote then?
We are. And it's interesting, man, because I look at it like, I know commercial real estate's kind of out of control right now. And, like, I don't understand, like, I guess in 2024, like, why you need an office anymore for the most part. Like, I do see there are some processes, like, especially if I'm teaching somebody something or I'm trying to see if, like, they're wasting time or money, like, sure, I would want to have them in front of me. But I think when you have good systems and you hire the right people and you train people the right way, you have you can really operate that way. So we've been virtual we were on and off virtual from 2016 to 2020 because we had like a co-working space. But in 2020, when things got weird, we kind of paid for it for a whole year, even though we couldn't go there. We stopped even doing that, and we've just found that productivity has been a lot better, man. If you just figure out how to run people on the right statistics, make sure that if statistics are up, that we're handling them. If they're down, we're handling them right away too.
Yeah, and so what are those statistics for you to monitor like productivity for your employees? I mean, are you the kind of boss that's like, yeah, just, work your 8 hours and just be productive? Or are you trying to like, see down to the minute, like making sure that you're getting your money's worth out of each employee?
I'm not a micromanager, man. And I'm also like, I don't know. I like to think I'm a boss you want to work for. I don't know. I hope that's true.
Let's ask some of those employees. We got a guest
Look,
employee from Jeremy
my
Ryan
employees
Slate.
and see what they say about me. Because for me, I honestly don't care, if you spend less time, than what you're paid for, if you're getting a good product. So for us, I care more about quality metrics. So here's an example. We're looking at the shows that we're booking as a booking team. I'm looking at okay, so yeah, sure, you booked this many shows this week, but what was the quality of those shows? Are they good shows that are going to be valuable for our clients and valuable for the show? So I'm looking at quality metrics more than I'm looking at numbers. And I'm looking at in sales, I'm not looking at just hey, contracts out. I'm looking at contracts signed and paid, right? Because that's an actual complete cycle of action. I think a lot of people are oh, I got this many contracts signed. Well, it's great, but if nobody's paying on those contracts, well, we got a problem. So those are the type of things I'm looking at is what's a fully completed quality product in each division. Marketing, great. Okay, you produced a lot of stuff this week, but how many actually totally finished marketing pieces were put out and actually sent out an email or social or whatever it may be? So when I'm looking at statistics for each division, that's what I'm looking at. What is a fully created quality product for your division? Not just a product, but a quality product.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it sounds too the language that you're using, your executive team and divisions and all these things, they're big, they're big company words, even though you're a small business, you're using these big company words. Do you think that it's valuable to set yourself with that mindset of, all right, this is how big companies operate. There's that book, what is it called? I think it's called Traction or something like that. And there's the entrepreneur operating system or whatever that is. I don't know if you've read that book at all, but
I haven't, no.
He talks about, and maybe even a better example is E-Myth. I don't know if you've read E-Myth before.
Yeah, E-Myth and E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great one, right? Where he kind of talks about creating all these systems and processes. And in the beginning, you're the janitor, you're the courier, and you're the CEO and the VP, and you're doing all these things, right? But then as you start to grow, you can delegate some of these things out. I guess my thought or my question to you is when you think about growing your business, I mean, do you think about having these different lines, right? Maybe in the beginning, you and your wife were doing the marketing and you were doing the booking and you were doing, the content, editing and all these other kind of things. As you've grown, do you find it's beneficial to have that mindset of divisions and executive teams and all these other kind of things?
Yeah. No, I think 100%, because your viewpoint, especially if you're the founder of a company, your viewpoint is actually what makes the company go, right? I think that's important. And when you look at it, every business essentially has two phases. You kind of have your phase one, which is where, somebody starting a company gets things done in kind of single hands while bringing people on board and teaching them. And you have phase two, where that executive is actually getting other people to get the work done. And I think that's the difference in where a lot of people struggle is, and I know I struggle with this too, guys, is you feel like the work you're doing has changed, right? For me, a lot of things I'm doing is building new programs, bringing out new software, training people. That's what I do day to day now. Where before I used to say oh my gosh, I'm not doing my job, which is recording and editing and doing all these different things. But when I look at it, you have to understand that what your role is and how you're actually making the lines better for other people. So for me, okay, if I can establish a process better, well, then my person that does editing can get 10 times more done than he could have with a bad process. So that's what you really have to look at is what lines am I putting there for other people to get done? And I do think that's important, even if you don't have a huge company, but it's to have that viewpoint there of I'm putting a process there that somebody else can come in and do well. And then also having a quality control process for if it doesn't go right. For different management process in our company, we have checklists of, okay, things aren't going right. Did you do these 5 things to fix it? So I think too, like having a standardization of that is really important, because that is where growth comes from, even if you're not there yet, man.
Mm-hmm. Ben, do you think that you were very similar to that? I feel like back in the day, it was like just you and Joy just doing all the things, and then you started to kind of bring on people. And did you see that by creating those systems and processes that you were able to just be more efficient in that growth?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's funny, actually, similarities as we do our team meetings on Fridays too, because I don't want that feeling of, okay, what are we going to do this week? And that's what
You know why, Ben? Because it's a Friday habit, Ben. That's why.
Right.
Anyway,
that's literally why our podcast is named that. I'm not joking. It's like the habit of reviewing, anything that's come up that week, any issues that have come up, any new ideas and that kind of stuff, and reviewing them as a team. Yeah, and I think 100% agree that your job, I mean, 2 things. One is, I think as a business owner myself, I feel like the job of a business owner or leader is, one is building those processes or having somebody in place to build them, however you want to do it. But fixing the process is way more important than doing the work yourself, if you want to grow. And then I think second thing is just being a good coach, being able to coach people through problems. And part of that might be like building those systems for troubleshooting, like you said, but also just being there and helping them troubleshoot why they're having trouble with something and kind of get through it. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
That's a really great point, Ben, too. Like, because I think for a lot of us, we look at a situation going wrong, we're like, oh, I gotta go in and fix it, right? Like, that used to be my viewpoint. What my viewpoint is now is, what training is out, or what didn't I make sure somebody knew, or what data is missing so the person can do it right. And I think if you can get past that, Ben, like you're talking about, man, that's a game changer. Because you stop being the Band-Aid guy, and you start being the guy that's like, let me put in things so they can flow. And if things aren't flowing, then I need to figure out why, right? Like, why is there a stuck flow? And that's the biggest thing I'm looking at, is when something is stuck in my organization, what training is missing, what write-up is missing, is there a software we need that we're not using? So like, that's what I'm trying to look at, which is not how I was looking at it before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even like we recently had like a small a client, a misunderstanding with a client. They expected one thing, we had promised something else, and then it was like, yeah, I could go jump in and fix that, but even though I was going to make the call, I had the other people that normally do that join the call as well, because I wanted them to hear it, and I talked through my reasoning beforehand. I made the call, and then afterwards said, okay, in the future, like anytime something like this happens, feel free to use up to this amount of money to fix the problem without any questions asked. It's okay, we can give them discounts. The point is for them to have a successful project, even if it's not fair to us, that's okay, within reason. Like, we'll just take care of it. And then just setting that expectations for the future, because then it's like, okay, next time that comes up, I probably don't even need to jump on the phone.
You got to get Mark to stop promising the clients that the Rock is going to give them a personal welcome call to their program, because it's just not true.
I'm like, listen, The Rock Johnson. Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about too, that's that also as you grow, I think as a creative, I know for me, there's like certain things that I want a certain way, or like I've developed my eye in a particular way and I want things a certain way. But the thing that I found sometimes, if you want to remove yourself from a process, you have to be okay with good enough. Like you have to be able to look at something and say, you know what, this isn't maybe, and maybe there's 2 ways you can approach it, because I kind of approach it both ways, where sometimes I'll go into a situation and say, hey, next time let's do this, this, and this, but hey, that's great. And I think by doing that, you allow yourself to trust other people to come along in that process so that it can help you grow. Because if I'm constantly in, the weeds on certain things and trying to micromanage how they're getting done, and they're being done exactly the way that I like to do them and how I do them, it just slows things down. And so it's like getting to a place where you can trust other people, and then being okay with, like it being good enough. Like, yeah, you know what? That's good enough. And if I can coach that person into trying to get better, but I can't always expect people to be exactly like me or have the exact same style or eye as I have. And I have to be okay with, is the client happy? Is the client, pleased with this? Then that's good enough,
That's a really good point, Mark, because I had somebody that I did work for like 8 years ago now. And at that point in time, this person had the viewpoint, and this person's a creative, they're a graphic designer. Like, I'm the only one that can sell my own service. And that's a huge problem when you're the only person that can sell your own service and deliver your own service. And in that period of time, like I went from having a business idea to having a few employees, you know, having a decent sized team, and that person's still trying to handle the same problem of, you know,
Right.
I can't sell my own service. And I think unless you get over that idea of good enough, man, like a lot of times it can just keep you small. Like that's a huge point. It's a great point.
Yeah. Listen, I'm glad that things are going good for you. What other things do you have going on? What other? I noticed on YouTube. I've noticed recently you've kind of started posting some interesting content that's kind of different than you have in the past. I'm curious to hear your reasoning behind that, or like if you've looked into some algorithms and you know, like, oh, people talking about education or MAGA or politics or whatever gets really good engagement. So we need to start creating that kind of content. I noticed maybe, are you using AI for some of your thumbnails?
So we're using vidIQ, which has been incredible for AI thumbnails, dude. It's awesome. And I'll be honest with you, the content change was literally my wife said, okay, the stuff you tell me in private and you complain about on a daily basis, either make a podcast about it or stop talking to me about it. So that's actually where the content change came from. And it was even to the point of, hey, this isn't a great marketing decision for you. And I'm like, hey, but I'm enjoying myself. So a lot of the content change was literally just because like I felt like I needed an outlet of what I've complained about since I was 12 years old. And that's kind of been, you know, a lot of the shift in content for me. But I've went heavy on like AI tools for podcasting because I found that production can be crazy expensive if you're trying to create a good product. So we started figuring out like what are the right AI tools to build a process off of. So we started using a plugin for Premiere Pro. It's called Autopod, and you can actually put in different camera views. And for us, we use one of the guests, one of the hosts, and the guest and host side by side, and we have it create like a 3-camera edit for us. And you do that, and it does it for you in about 30 seconds, and that's you get an edited file out. And then we run it through another software called video.ai, and that creates a lot of the clips for us and things like that. And then you mentioned like, hey, it looks like you're using some AI thumbnails. We've been using vidIQ's added a lot of different tools recently too, like one that can actually look at your title, description, and tags, and from that it can actually give you some thumbnail ideas. Some of them are way off, and I'm like, what is it thinking? And other times I'm like, wow, these are really good. So we've started using a lot more of those. One thing I am really excited for, because like, dude, I've gone so deep down the YouTube rabbit hole of figuring out like what makes a video do good, what makes a video do bad, like how does watch time get better, why does my click through conversion matter? There's a feature coming out from YouTube, and then they said Q1, so I don't know when that is. We're in Q1 now, so soon would be great. That actually you're going to be able to upload anywhere from 2 to 4 thumbnails at the same time, and then natively YouTube's actually going to do A/B test of thumbnails, and you can see which one has the best click-through rate. So I'm actually excited for that. I've just been going deep on the technology of like how does it work, which is wild because I feel like I should have been doing video like 4 years ago, but you know, I guess it's a good time to start now.
Yeah, it's always a good time to start, and I think that's one thing that can kind of differentiate you from everyone else, right? Is having video. And then also I feel like I think you connect with someone that you can see, you know, it's like when you can see them, I think you can feel you know, just a little bit of more of who they are. Like you were rocking a fat old mustache, like, you know.
Oh, like my wife would not kiss me for 4 months, so I had to get rid of it.
Dude, that was a legit stash, dude. Like so thick. I'm like, dang, like he may not have gotten the height, but he got the stash. Like he was born in the wrong era. He should have been in the 70s.
Well, I was getting people telling me that I look too much like my dad now because my dad's had like this like walrus mustache my entire life, like Wilford Brimley or something like that.
Nice. That's so awesome.
Genetic. Nice.
Yeah, my son's trying to grow a mustache, and I'm like, but you know, he's got that little puby mustache that, you know, is thin and, you know, just doesn't.
Well, dude, I have very thin facial hair, so that took me a good like 2 months to grow. There was a lot of work involved in creating that mustache.
Yeah, I mean, but I just couldn't believe how dense it was. Like, if you have trouble growing hair, I mean, you could have fooled me. Our one of our producers or engineer, James, he can't grow good facial hair, but he can grow a really good stash. Like, but you know, again, yeah, his wife wouldn't kiss him. He kind of looks like Hitler a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. It's not good.
I saw that this thing recently, and it was like all these different mustaches like laid out, and they're like, this one is the handlebar. This one is the walrus. They're like, this one is the toothbrush. I'm like, the toothbrush kind of looks like a Hitler mustache. Is that what they're calling it now?
Yeah, it's politically correct to say toothbrush. So with this content,
Yeah.
I'm curious just about, I mean, it seems in some ways, I feel like I'm always afraid to talk about politics, or I'm afraid to talk about any polarizing thoughts or ideas, because although I am opinionated and I have strong opinions about things, I also
Sure.
like, I care about people. And if I say, oh, I align with X, Y, and Z, I might feel like I might be isolating someone. And so
Yeah.
for me, I always feel like, you know what? They say don't talk about politics and sex, you know, like just leave those things out of family get-togethers and you'll be okay. And I feel kind of the same way.
I guess
where it's
somebody
like,
should have told my uncle to not talk about sex at the table then. I don't know.
the uncle. But you know what I'm saying? Like, and especially too, as a service-based business, it's like, okay, we service all sorts of people. You know, I service, you know, people who are like conservative and Democrats and you know, liberal and independent, like Christian, non-Christian, atheists, like all these things. And so I feel like if I talk about too much of one thing, that might isolate or be bad for business or whatever that might be. Did you have any fears about kind of this, a little bit of this stuff you're talking about at all?
No, I think, Mark, because there's a way to do it. And I think there's a lot of people, especially if you're on Twitter, there's a lot of people that are like really abrasive about it. And it's just like, what are you trying to achieve other than get people to click on that? Like I was on a podcast last week where I had a political conversation with somebody that is, you know, we're on opposite sides of the aisle. It was one of the best conversations I've ever had, because I'm a big believer that if you can have conversations where iron sharpens iron and it forces both of us to have a better viewpoint, or it shows us that our viewpoints don't work, I think there's a lot of value in that. And the thing I've found, because for me, like, sure, I'm more right of center, but what I've tried to do is look at issues for what's there and try and give people like, hey, this is what the game board of life currently looks like. And based on that, you know, these are, you know, decisions you should consider making. So I've actually found, like, for us, we work with a lot of CEOs and founders, and a lot of them are like, you know, like, hey, I found that economic trends one you did like really helpful, because that helped me to decide, like, you know, like, what should I know about hiring or things like that. So for me, I'm actually finding I'm getting really good feedback from people that want to know certain things about trends and certain things about what's happening in culture, because that affects, you know, their business building ideas too. So I think there's a way to have that conversation. But I think there's a lot of people, like, especially on Twitter, that are having the conversation in a way that was like, I don't know, like, it feels like Mortal Kombat, where it's like, finish him. And it's just like, what are, you know, like, get over here. Like, and it's not really like, see? It's like, it's not really like how I couldn't help myself. It's like, that's not really like tactical. And now I will say, G.K. Chesterton did say that the only two things to talk about are politics and religion. So I don't know, man. I think it's life. And I think sometimes we have to have uncomfortable conversations to be able to come to agreements or disagreements on things.
Yeah. And, you know, they say there's the riches and the niches. I think too, there's this element of, I think a lot of times people don't talk about certain things, whereas religion, politics, sex, whatever those things are, right? And then they're not really being true to themselves, you know, and then they're kind of hindering what their full potential is, because they're being so guarded. And I think people connect with that authenticity, and you'll kind of build your tribe around you. And I mean, I think Joe Rogan's a great example of that, right? Where he was someone who was like a liberal person in Hollywood, comedian, whatever, but then he also had conservative ideas, and he wasn't afraid to kind of talk about all those things and just lay them out there. And then now, I mean, he's the biggest podcast in the world, and, you know, one of the someone who has, I would say, a lot of like power behind what he does, and guests that he has on, and marketing and all those other kind of things. So,
well, that's the beauty in podcasting, though, man. Like, we can have a lot of these big conversations, and like, it allows people to really describe what they're thinking, feeling, and doing, rather than just being like innately polarizing, which I think is a lot of what TV does to us. And I think that's what's really cool about podcasting.
Yeah, I agree. And it gives that long form conversation, you know, to happen, because I think the soundbite is where you can get in trouble, right? It's when you only have like a 30-second spot on a news, you know, network in order to get your idea out. And then it's like instantly you can be judged on that. But there's nuance to everything. And I think, yeah, these long form conversations, that's where like the nuance happens. I appreciate that, because for me too, I always feel like that I'm open to changing my ideas. You know, like if you can give a better argument to me of why X, Y, and Z, like I'm open to change the way I think about something, you know? And so I'm
a husband, man. We have to figure out how to change our ideas quite often. So
That's right,
I am
yeah.
also open.
and all you can do is just pray that they someday see the way the things they should be seen. But
I will tell you though, Mark, like speaking of sound bites though, the one thing I am kind of terrified of is like a lot of these AI voice clips going around, because they're like really good.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that's kind of terrifying. Like I just for sake of time was trying to save time on doing an audio version of the latest book that I wrote. So I used 11 Labs as voice cloner. And I had it actually do my audiobook.
Really?
And nobody that I know and I have known my entire life actually knew it wasn't me. That's the scary part.
Really?
I think it's perfect for that type of thing where you are supposed to speak in a consistent way.
Yes.
I think that you're like, when you're talking on a podcast, you're very emotive and you're like talking high, loud, quiet. I think that's harder to copy right now. Someday it'd probably be easier to copy, but I was going to say, but for audiobooks, it's like, that's a perfect use case for that kind of thing.
Dude, it saved me so much time. And then I listened to it, I'm like, sounds like me. Yeah. So I just hope that me doesn't say anything terrible that I have to know about.
It wasn't me. It was my AI.
Yep.
Someone
can you imagine, dude? Can you imagine in the next like 6 months to a year that a celebrity does something terrible and says, "Oh, my AI did it"?
Yeah. I mean, we're not too far away from it. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. So we use a program called Speechify to do some voiceover work. So depending on the kind of video that we need, the Speechify, you can have it be like thoughtful and earnest when it's, you know, talking, and then, you know, just adding some commas and some periods and long breaths and things like that. It comes really convincing, and then it saves on time and money too. So AI definitely is one of those things where I don't know where it's leading, in the sense of like, I don't know what the end game, because all I see is Terminator 2 Judgment Day, where it's like well, I just see me holding onto a fence turning into a, you know, mist of bones.
But
where's John Connor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring me to him, Mark Labrador II. Where is John Connor?
But you know, that's the thing, is I feel like you need to embrace the AI stuff, because I don't think it's going anywhere. And when used properly, it's making things more efficient. And I do feel bad for a lot of jobs out there, like, you know, copywriters and some of this voiceover stuff, right? Like even show notes and things like that for podcasts. We had someone who was doing our show notes, but now AI does it better than that person and is like $40 a month instead of like $400 a month. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, why would I keep paying for that when I can get it in this service, you know?
Well, I think efficiency is a big part of it. I think there's people that try to use it in like a lazy way. But I think if you could figure out how to be more efficient with it, it's really valuable. And I think the thing you have to consider as well, like you look at the Industrial Revolution, and that like changed everything. And I think AI is a very similar thing to even, you know, what the internet did, right? Like we had businesses that disappeared, new ones that created. And I think at the same time, where you see losses, you're going to see brand new verticals and markets created that we didn't even know could exist. So I think right now, while we're kind of in this new era, you are going to see some people losing jobs. You are going to see some of those things happening, but I think you're going to see brand new things invented, right? Like, you know, maybe you'll have people that have a new idea on how to train AIs, and that's now a new career. So I think you have all these career paths that could open if people just figure out how to be more efficient from the way AI is used.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like it's gonna separate it'll allow people who maybe have ideas and creativity to be able to execute on some of those things that maybe they couldn't before because they didn't have the skills. I mean, I think about even when Google kind of became really prominent, you know, in the early 2000s, I was able to do my job and do things I could never do because I had Google. You know, it was like I was a PC support specialist, and I never had any formal training but I could Google a problem and then see how to fix it. And then I could go fix it, And so it was like, that was a way of me using a tool in order to solve a problem. And I always thought, like, the person who's calling for this PC support ticket, like, they could just Google it too and just do the thing that I did. I didn't know how to do what they needed, 5 minutes before they called, but they called, and then I figured it out and went and solved the problem. And I think that, those are the kind of people who are like, oh, I don't like technology and I don't, want to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, if you don't move along with the times, like, the times are just going to kind of move over you, and then it's like, yeah, you're a copywriter who's not engaging with ChatGPT because you're like, oh, I'm a purist. Like, I do X, Y, and Z. But it's like, could you be more efficient? Could you be, offer more services? Could you offer, more complex things if you use these tools to help you do your job better? And I think, yeah, you probably, so you should probably embrace it. My only fear, though, is that there is that laziness about it where it's just you plug it in and then it delivers something back to you. And I think as a creative, it's like, well, this isn't really creating anything. It's just taking what's ever been said or printed or published, and then it's rearranging it to fit what your request is. And so I do feel like, is there going to be an end to that at some point? Like it's absorbed all the knowledge that we've had up to this point. So like, how is it going to get new knowledge,
I just have this terrifying vision of humans turning into these things that are kind of like slugs, and you're sitting on your chair and you're like, Alexa, get me something right now. I'm playing Madden with my eyes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just, there is that part of me that's
Wall-E?
a little bit.
They're floating around in the chairs and they're just like, watching screens.
But here's the exciting thing about this, and this is what I actually think is exciting, is the more we go towards that, the more people want and will pay a premium for things that are innately human, right?
Yeah.
So a really good copywriter has a ton of value because, number one, they're good, but number two, there's so much more value on that now because the regular version is so available, right? So like now you're going to take even less clients and you're going to charge even more. Just like a good artist, like, sure, we're using AI thumbnails out there, but if you look at AI artwork, dude, it doesn't have a soul. And I think that is the difference when you look at somebody that's a real artist and a real designer. Like there's soulfulness to that. There's something to that. And I think that actually makes somebody that's really good at that more of a premium. So I think at the same time, there's also a little bit of that as well that you're going to see.
Yeah. Have you watched those, those AI videos that were recreated like in the style of Wes Anderson? It's like Star Wars in the style of Wes Anderson. Have you seen any of those?
Oh, is that like Elsa Gate? Like that thing?
I don't know what Elsa Gate is, but if you
Gate was they trained an AI to like look at what people watch on YouTube and then like take the most popular things and stick them together. So it was like Disney princesses like hanging out with Hitler biographies while they like dated Spider-Man or something. It was some like wild thing that they were trying to figure out how to get watch hours.
Yeah, no, I have never heard of that, but there's all these Wes Anderson like movies where they have all these prominent actors, that are sketched out. It definitely, there's a handful of them out there, so it's worth checking out and watching. Just like
they did
Google.
One with George Carlin recently, where they're like, "Oh, it's a George Carlin AI stand-up," and it like, number one, they didn't have his
and stuff.
Yeah, but they didn't have his style like at all.
Yeah,
and it didn't really sound. It sounded like him if he had a nasal infection. So like, I just, you know what I mean? It wasn't there for me.
Right. But it will be interesting because I heard that Bruce Willis, because he's kind of. He has some sort of degenerative disease, and so he can't act anymore. And I think he's, on the verge of passing away or something like that. And he can't really, think for himself. But I guess he signed something of his likeness or image away so that they could use, like, if they wanted to make like a Die Hard, 6, they could essentially, use his like likeness in order to create that movie, and he could make money, which would be interesting.
Could you imagine how contract law is going to change, man? Like, because these are things that like you didn't have to consider. Like I know the first one to do this is going to be freaking Disney, because they're going to be like, oh, you guys do all of our voices. We own you all now. Like I just took my kids last month to see Disney on Ice, and they use all the voices of all the characters, but those characters, like, they're not there. They're not recording for it. Right. So like, can you imagine how contract law is going to change for this stuff?
Oh, I know. It's gonna be crazy because, I mean, yeah, you've heard some of those Kanye remakes and those different songs that have been produced, like, because essentially they'll be like a rapper who uses Kanye's voice and he writes his own rap, but then uses Kanye's voice over his beat and stuff. And it's like, at what point is that copyright infringement, right? Like at what point is somebody's likeness or their voice or whatever that is, like encroaching on how they make money, right? And how they do. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know where, like I said, I don't know where it all leads. Because obviously it's just going to exponentially like keep going. I mean, essentially we'll all be in our Apple Vision Pros and having this podcast, you know, where our avatars are talking to each other and we're visiting other places in the world and we never want to leave our little apartments and we're just eating bugs and like, you know, we're just being, you know.
There was I watched this thing with this chef that like uses bugs in his cooking and so recently. Dude, it was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. You're not going to get me to eat bugs. It's just not happening.
No, I'm not down for the bugs. My middle son, he loves a good like challenge, a food challenge, and there was like some dried crickets that he ate because he was like, oh, this would be ridiculous. He ate the dried crickets.
No, dude, I'm like mostly Irish, wheat, potatoes, and meat, and that's pretty much it.
That's it. You said you had a pig. What is the pig for? Are you going to make it into bacon at some point, or is it just like
he's my
pig?
son. No, he's my son.
Dude.
He's a little overweight because he's like 140 pounds now. He's hard to pick up, but he's a good boy. If you don't feed him fast enough, he will bite your feet.
Okay.
But he walks around the yard all day, digging some holes with his nose, looking for acorns. So he's having a good life, man. He's living his best life.
I mean, is there an end game for him, or does he just have a heart attack and then you just bury him in the backyard?
One day, man, those coronary arteries get a little too hard from all the food he's been eating, and that's kind of the end of it.
Okay, you won't eat him?
I don't know that I could. Like, so my one of my mother-in-law's chickens got attacked by a hawk recently. So my brother-in-law, the same day, plucked the feathers and cooked the thing and fed it to my kids. I don't know if I could do that because, like, you spend the time raising these animals, I would feel weird about it.
I hear you.
You're like, no, don't eat Phyllis. That's Phyllis the chicken. Don't eat her.
Well, I see. We were on a shoot once. This was like in Washington, and we were at this farmer's property, and we were hanging out, and they had us over for lunch, and we're eating this like spaghetti with this meat and all this stuff, and they're like, oh, like do you like the meal? I'm like, oh, this is delicious. Yeah, they're like, yeah, that's one of our pigs, and it's like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's Fruit Loop, and it was like, what do you mean? It's like, oh yeah, that was the pig's name. It was Fruit Loop, because our daughter had this like experiment that she was doing for 4-H where we only fed this pig Fruit Loops, like 100% to see if it would affect the flavor or taste of it. And it didn't taste like Fruit Loops. No, it tasted just like delicious pork. But there was something I felt a little interesting about eating an animal that it knew its name, but then in the same way, I feel like as Americans, we should be more like connected to our food because then we might respect it more.
Agree. Yeah, we're just too disconnected from our food. I agree with that.
Yeah, and so it's like I think if maybe you would eat less meat, not because you're told that it's better for the environment, blah blah blah, but because it's like you're more connected to like, oh wow, this is a life that I'm taking in order to like sustain myself. Like, let me do less of that,
Yeah, and I agree with you because I go through like 10 pounds of chicken a week on my own. I can't imagine what would go through if those were my chickens. But, as far as I know, I don't know them. They don't have names. Like, chicken breast should not be that large. Like, so anyway, anyway.
You still crushing the, 80 grams of protein a day, and there you go. Sun's out, guns out.
Not like I used to, though, man. Like, in my 20s, I was 215. I'm like 160 now, but I'm pretty happy being there.
Yeah, well, because you were doing the powerlifting stuff, right, and doing all those things, so you really had to bulk up. What about I feel like there's this huge trend, right, of like the 4 a.m. wake ups, the cold showers, like just being the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. I feel like some of that culture, it's kind of like the hustle and grind culture, like the Gary Vaynerchuk of like, you need to be like grinding. Like I feel like things are starting to soften up around entrepreneurial industry and like, have you seen any of that as well? Like kind of
I don't understand the 4 a.m. wake up thing, man. Like there is no human that should be awake that early. Like I just
because Jeremy, if you're up at 4, your competition's not waking up till 8, so you got 4 hours on them. You're working 2 extra days in one day.
Yeah, well, guess what? I don't put in the wrong amount for a payment because I'm awake. Make less mistakes because I sleep.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
I'm
you,
with you on
So
that.
for me, like I've always been like looked at things for efficiency. Like I've been doing cold showers before they were cool, just because they wake you the hell up.
Yeah.
You know, and there's definitely some health benefits. I don't know why everybody and their brother has like a cold dunk tank right now.
yeah.
Like,
I
and my
see
thought
that.
process is like, dude, like I know it's winter, so you can do that now. What are you gonna do in the summer? It's just a swimming pool otherwise. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I see a lot of people doing that. I don't know. I think things are changing quite a bit. Like for me, the only reason I run and stuff early and stuff like that is because I want to have breakfast with my kids. That's about it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like for me, I do what works for me. I'm usually up at like 6:30, 7 o'clock. Take a run, not a crazy run because I'm not a crazy runner, but I'll do like a mile every day. I work out and then come back and have breakfast with my kids. That for me. That's the only reason I'm doing things at that time of day, just because life gets away with you by the time you get through the day, and I want to have some time with my family in the morning.
Totally. Are your kids homeschooling or?
They are the first is 5. So we just kind of started with like alphabet and stuff like that,
Okay.
and she had a lot of fun with my wife. We have our third one on the way in June, so life's gonna
Oh,
get a little
dude,
more crazy. So
congratulations.
thank you, man. It's
Three's
gonna
a
be a little
good
crazier.
number. I'm a big fan of the number 3, and 3 kids is like the perfect balance. But you know what? Listen, you're a good person, you're a good man, and the more children that you can have to like populate our society and train them up in a positive way, I will encourage you to have as many kids as you can.
I don't want to have more than 3, man. Like at this point in time, like they could go Lord of the Flies on me and like take over the house, and
That's
like
right.
Right.
I don't want to have that option
It's
like
like,
too
what
much,
happened to Jeremy? Oh, his kids murdered him, and now they're using AI to like make videos on his channels.
Yo, there was this guy in Pennsylvania and his crazy ass kid that's been suing the government for a few years because they let him take out a student loan. He beheaded his father. Did you see this in the news?
No, what?
Yeah, this guy in Pennsylvania. And then he was on YouTube and he put up a video and he's like, "And this is my father's head." You didn't see this in the news, dude? You got to Google the
No.
story
Oh, I
because
don't
then
know if I want
YouTube.
to now.
Well, you don't have to watch the video; just read the article. But then YouTube like left the video up for an entire day. And it's like
Oh my
YouTube takes
goodness.
down videos for anything. And they're like leaving up the video of the kid talking about his father's severed head.
Oh man, that is dark.
Sorry, man. I couldn't
No,
help it.
that's good. That's good. But dude, great catching up with you and talking. And where can people connect with you if they want to find out more? If there's some executive that's like, I need someone to book me on shows, Jeremy's your guy. Where do they go?
So we got a great book out there right now for everybody that wants to figure out like how to utilize podcasts and get the most out of them. And we've actually got that. It's for free. You just got to pay the shipping. So if you head over to bestpodcastbook.com, you can grab that. And you can also find all the ways to connect with us as well. So bestpodcastbook.com, you can learn how to utilize podcasts and make a big impact, man.
Awesome. Ben, what are your takeaways for today's episode?
All right. Number 1, pigs are friends, not food. Number 2, I got a couple here. Actually, I was going to say one thing that stood out to me when we were talking was I liked your idea of considering how to basically asking each of your teammates in different roles and different teams how they can contribute income to the business. I think that's a really good tip. That's a good way for me. Think about even
Nobody
if it's not
considers that, man. They're always looking at the owner like, how are we going to make more money?
Right. It's like traditionally, it's the owner's responsibility, but getting them involved in it, and also non-traditionally income generating positions. That's a good idea to ask them about that. So good takeaway there. And then I also really liked what you said about having a mindset of building processes, not just doing the work. And then the last one was just if you're measuring the right stats, like for example, fully created quality products is what you're measuring, then remote work can be more efficient than in-office work.
And if you could leave one tip, Jeremy, to our audience who's listening, how they can better themselves, better their business, or one thing that really has helped you be successful in your business starting next week, what would that one thing of advice be?
I'll make it simple, man. I would say subscribe to the Friday Habit. That would be the lesson, man. You will get everything you need on the Friday Habit. So that would be my one piece of advice.
Oh, thanks, dude. You're the best. Hey, with that, go to thefridayhabit.com to find show notes for this episode. And there you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that will show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, just like Jeremy said, and leave us a review in the Apple Podcast app. If you have a question or topic you'd like us to cover, don't forget to record us a quick voice memo and email it to hello@thefridayhabit.com.
That's right. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.